I'm Jerome Weeks. The inaugural season of the Winspear Opera House has just about concluded. What can be said about it and the recent world premieres by the Dallas Opera and the Fort Worth Opera? Scott Cantrell is best known as the classical music critic of the Dallas Morning News, but he also writes about architecture for the paper. Before arriving in North Texas in 1999, Cantrell wrote for the Kansas City Star. He was also the president of the Music Critics Association of North America. Scott, welcome to Think.
Thank you.
Well, the shakedown cruise is just about over for the Winspear for its first season. So how did it fare as a performance venue for opera?
Well, I think acoustically it turned out to be really superb. And of course, everyone holds his and her breath for that to see how it's going to work out. There were good advance thoughts for it because the same acoustician, Bob Essert, had done a new hall in Toronto, which turned out to be really superb. And this is same size and same basic configuration. And I think he did really a fine job. When I went in there for the first rehearsal with orchestra, I was astonished at how the voices just leapt off the stage. In fact, it was a program with Tom Hampson, and he started to sing, and I literally jumped in my seat at this huge sound coming off the stage. It took a little playing around to get the balance of the orchestra just right, and the orchestra is on a riser that can be adjusted in height. And they played with that a bit, and it's different for different operas and different sizes of orchestras. But the other thing is that the sound is so consistent throughout the house, and in the course of rehearsals and performances, I made a point of sitting in as many different places as I could. And I don't know of any hall where the sound is so consistent, even when you're well in the back corner under a balcony.
But if there was something you could change, something you could improve, what would it be?
Well, several things, frankly. One of them is that I think people were surprised at the poor sight lines at the front of the side balconies. And that's the problem when you have a horseshoe-shaped hall, which is the traditional opera house configuration. And I think there were quite a few complaints from patrons the first nights discovering this. There are some seats at the front where you can only see about a third of the stage. And I frankly think they could have done a better job in thinking through that. There are also a number of logistical issues which sort of surprised me with the building. I love the way it looks outside and the way it draws you in, particularly at night. But there are some bad bottlenecks in the building. And all the upper levels coalesce on a stairway about 6 feet wide. And I hope there's never a fire in there.
I think we all do.
I'm actually sort of surprised it got past the fire marshals.
As arts organizations have moved into these kinds of performance centers, many of them have come to realize that it's a great opportunity, but it also has increased expectations. They have to step up their game. And the Dallas Theater Center, for instance, when it moved into the Wiley, expanded its budget and its season. Other than the Moby Dick premiere, how has the Dallas Opera responded to the new location?
Well, they had to step up their budget too because they're performing in a space about a third smaller than the music hall, and so they had to add more performances, which means more cost. You have to pay extra for the orchestra and stagehands and singers. So that's added appreciably to their budget. But I think actually it struck me this year that the casting had been more consistent this year than it had been in some past years. And so I think that aspect was well done. I think there are going to be expectations for more sophisticated productions than we've seen in recent years, and it's often been evident that that's where the corners were cut, is in the physical productions, the sets and so forth.
You also expressed disappointment in the next season announcement.
Yes. Well, I was disappointed in that it represents, I think it's 83 years of operatic repertory, and opera has been going on for 400 years. And I was disappointed that there was nothing from the 20th century, that the newest opera in the season, the Boris Godunov, was composed when Ulysses S. Grant was president and Jesse James was conducting his first train robberies. And when you consider all the opera that has happened since then, frankly, I think it's irresponsible.
The Fort Worth Opera premiered before Night Falls last month, and of course Dallas Opera had Moby Dick. What do these two operas, how they were conceived, how they were developed, what they attempted to do, and whether they succeeded or not. What do these two compare, contrast, world premieres tell us about the companies?
Well, it is interesting that we had, within the space of a month, 2 world premieres here. And for that matter, that you could see 5 different operas within the space of a month here, which has never happened before, I don't think. Well, I think the Moby Dick was perhaps a more ambitious project. Of course, a huge novel, but I think the librettist Gene Shear did a brilliant job of focusing on these 2 pairs of characters, and his writing in filling in the conversations and setting the scenes and the choral writing. The libretto is really brilliantly done. And the music, I think, turned out to be very effective. It's neither work pushed any envelopes of innovation, and one hardly expects that these days. American opera has become, in general, a pretty conservative medium compared to European operas, where avant-garde styles of composing are still sort of the everyday language, and that really has not happened here. We seem to be stuck in a kind of mid-20th century language, or slightly updated, and certainly both these pieces reflect that. And you could hear echoes of Benjamin Britten and Shostakovich and Debussy in both operas, although their feeling is certainly different. And Before Night Falls, being a story about Cuban figures, has Cuban influences in it, although it was noted by some of my colleagues that even Moby Dick had a little bit of south of the border dance music in it. I think Moby Dick is, I would say, about 85% there, and maybe 90% there. There were a couple of things that I thought didn't work so well, particularly in the second act. And interesting, both of them seemed to me that the inspiration flagged a little bit in the second act. But I think with a couple of adjustments, Moby Dick will be a really first-rate new opera. Before Night Falls, I had a lot of problems with, and I think starting with the libretto, which I think is extremely clunky, and it feels like sloganeering much of the time. And if you start with a bad libretto, you've got a problem.
Well, thank you very much. I hope to be reading you again sometime.
Thank you.
To read reviews of those operas, Scott's reviews and others, go to artandseek.org. Chris?
Thanks, Jerome. To access our free podcast, you can go to the Think page of KERA's website, kera.org/think. And we'd like to know your thoughts on the show as well. You can email us at think@kera.org. My name is Chris Boyd. Thanks for being with us, and have a great week.
To learn more, go to kera.org/think. Think is made possible in part by Del Perot Systems. Del Perot Systems develops and delivers a comprehensive suite of IT and application services, business process solutions, and consulting services designed to help customers succeed. For more information, you can visit Dell.com. By Southwest Securities, a nationally recognized regional brokerage firm that's been meeting the needs of Southwest investors for more than 30 years. Southwest Securities is a member of the New York Stock Exchange and SIPC. By the Executive Education Center at the University of Texas at Dallas, providing degree and non-degree programs to help corporate professionals and executives stay ahead. On the web at som.utdallas.edu/executive. And by the valued support of KERA members. Thank you.